What you are about to hear may forever change the way you see the world and yourself. If you've ever felt your kindness has been misunderstood, used against you, or simply ignored, then this message is for you. We often believe that being good is enough, that if we act with purity, the universe will respond in kind. But tell me, how many times have you felt that no matter how much you give your best, the world simply does not respond in kind? That instead of receiving gratitude, you've been met with indifference? That instead of respect, your nobility has been mistaken for weakness? It's an uncomfortable thought, I know, because admitting that kindness alone is not enough is acknowledging that life isn't how we were taught it would be. Here's the truth many don't dare to tell you. The world does not reward goodness. It rewards strength. And no, this is not about becoming cold or cruel. It's not about betraying your essence or abandoning who you are. It's about understanding that kindness without power is like a river without a course, a fire without direction, a seed buried in stone. Think of it this way. Imagine you hold the most precious jewel in the world. It shines with an unparalleled light and holds immense power, but it is fragile. Now imagine sharing it with everyone, trusting they will care for it with the same love with which you give it. But to your surprise, some take it without even looking at it, drop it to the ground, forget it, and step on it without noticing. Others keep it as if it were theirs and never return it. Only a few, very few, hold it with the same respect with which you gave it. Now tell me, how long will it take before that jewel becomes worn, broken, unrecognizable? That's what kindness becomes when given without limits, without discernment, without criteria. If you felt that others have taken your energy, love, time, and effort without giving anything in return, it's not because you are bad or insufficient. It's because you haven't understood something fundamental. Kindness has no value if it is not protected by strength. This is where many fail. They believe being strong means being aggressive, that setting boundaries is selfish, that protecting oneself is synonymous with distrust. But the truth is that strength and kindness are not opposites. They are inseparable allies. Without strength, kindness turns into martyrdom, purposeless sacrifice, a flower growing in an open field, exposed to being plucked by anyone who passes by. Without kindness, strength becomes destructive, cruel, and blind. The key is not to choose between one and the other, but to know when to use each one. Think of the times you stayed silent when you should have spoken up, the times you yielded when you should have resisted, the times you gave without measure until you felt empty. Where does this impulse to please come from? The desire to avoid conflict? The habit of always thinking of others before yourself? Perhaps you grew up believing that if you were good enough, everything would balance out, that if you gave love, love would return to you. But life is not an automatic reflection of what you give. Life is a battlefield, and in this field, good intentions are not enough. The truth is that the world is full of people who do not think like you. People who don't see your kindness as a gift, but as an opportunity. Who don't value your empathy, but use it as a tool to their advantage. Who don't respect your generosity, but exploit it until there is nothing left. If you don't learn to see this, if you don't wake up to the reality that not everyone has the same heart as you will keep exhausting yourself in a fight that was never fair. This is not about living in fear or becoming distrustful. It's about learning to see clearly, understanding that not every door should be opened, that not every hand asking for help does so with good intentions, that not every smile is sincere. It's about realizing that your energy and love are sacred resources that should not be given away without measure. Most importantly, it's about stopping asking for permission to exist and no longer waiting for the world to recognize your value before you recognize it yourself. Here's the hardest truth of all. No one is coming to save you. No one will give you the recognition you deserve if you don't give it to yourself first. No one will set the boundaries you need if you don't set them. If you keep waiting for the world to be fair just because you will keep being disappointed. Strength lies in walking alone when necessary, in the courage not to betray yourself just to fit in the determination to protect your light without letting anyone extinguish it. Look within yourself. Recall all the times you put others above yourself, All the times you said yes when you wanted to say no, all the times you allowed a line to be crossed that should never have been crossed. Now ask yourself why. Why is it so hard for you to defend yourself? Why do you feel guilty when you put yourself first? Why do you keep believing your worth lies in how much you can give others and not in how much you can give yourself? The world needs good people, but not good people who let themselves be consumed by others. It needs good people who are also strong, who are not afraid to speak their truth, who do not allow their light to be used against them. The question is, are you ready to be one of those people? This is the advice no one gave you. The advice that may hurt to hear, but that you need to know. Being good is not enough. Being good without strength is a sentence. But being good and strong is the path to true freedom. Stop asking for permission. Stop waiting for others to validate what you already know inside you. Stop thinking that protecting yourself is selfish, that setting boundaries is cruel, that saying no is a betrayal of your essence. The truth is this: there is nothing more valuable than a person who knows their own light and also knows their darkness. Stop waiting for life to deliver justice, because justice in this world is not automatic. It is built, defended, and claimed through actions, not through wishes. If you don't learn to do this, you will keep falling into the same trap over and over again. The question is, until when? How much more do you need to lose to realize it's time to change? How many more times must you feel betrayed, exhausted, and empty before you accept that being good is not enough? How many times do you need to see that those who understand the rules of the game keep advancing while you remain waiting for life to reward you for playing fair? Change will not come from the outside. It will not arrive in the form of recognition, an opportunity falling from the sky, or the sudden transformation of those around you. Change begins when you decide to stop walking blindly, when you choose for your kindness to be your sword and not your cage. When you understand that being good does not mean being naive, that trust does not mean being blind, and that love does not mean allow yourself to be consumed. You have all the power within you, but power without direction is useless, and kindness without strategy is a waste. If you truly want to make a difference, if you genuinely want to live in alignment with your essence without being devoured by a world that doesn't always play fair, then it's time to learn. It's time to open your eyes, to move with the same intelligence with which you've always loved. Because kindness alone is not enough, but kindness combined with wisdom, that's an unstoppable force. You've given too much, more than you had, more than you should have. You extended your hands with the hope that the world would recognize the value of what you offered, only to watch those same hands end up empty, exhausted, and wounded. And still you keep giving. You keep believing that if you give enough, sooner or later you'll receive the same in return. But what if that day never comes? How much more are you willing to deplete yourself, waiting for the world to acknowledge something it never promised to give back? You were taught that giving is the essence of goodness, that generosity is a noble act, that sacrifice is an act of love. But no one told you there's an invisible line between generosity and self-destruction, between love and self-annihilation. Without realizing it, you cross that line, becoming someone who gives without measure, without reservation, without pause. And now you wonder why you feel so drained, why the weight of the world rests on your shoulders, why despite being there for everyone, no one seems to be there for you. It's not selfish to want to receive. It's not weakness to need rest. It's not cruelty to choose yourself over others. But you've been made to believe otherwise, that if you stop giving, you'll disappoint those who've grown used to taking from you, that if you set boundaries, others will see you as cold, distant, inaccessible. But here's the truth. Sacrifice does not make you more valuable. It does not make you more deserving of love. It only makes you easier to consume. The problem has never been your kindness. The problem is a belief that for your kindness to have value, it must be infinite, that to prove your love, you must give yourself entirely, that to be useful, you must always be available. But who taught you that? Who made you believe that your worth depends on how much you can endure, that to be loved, you must be willing to wear yourself down to the limit? Look at the places where you become indispensable, the relationships where you've turned into the pillar, the unwavering support, the refuge that's always there. Ask yourself if those people would do the same for you. Ask if they've ever looked at you with the same depth with which you've looked at them. Ask if they've ever noticed your exhaustion, your sadness, your need for rest. And if the answer is no, then perhaps it's time to ask yourself a more important question. Why do you keep allowing this? You keep telling yourself that if you keep giving, if you keep being there, if you keep showing how much you care, someday they'll understand. Someday they'll see what you do for them. Someday they'll appreciate what you've given. But that day never comes, because those who grow accustomed to receiving without effort rarely learn to see the effort of the giver. And so you keep giving more than you have, waiting for recognition that never arrives, feeling like your life is a constant depletion. Maybe you told yourself this is the right thing to do, that being good means giving without expecting anything in return, that it's part of your essence, your mission, your purpose. But deep down, there's a part of you that screams for rest, that pleads to be seen, and you've ignored it. You've silenced it with excuses, with explanations, with a hope that things will someday change. But they won't, because no one will stop to ask you to give less. No one will tell you to set boundaries. Because as long as you remain the one who sustains, who helps, who's always there, you'll continue to be useful. And as long as you're useful, you'll keep being consumed. True goodness isn't about giving until you're empty. It's not about offering yourself without limit. It's not about being an inexhaustible resource for others. True goodness is knowing when to stop, when to say no, when to recognize that your energy is sacred, that your well-being matters, that your life cannot revolve solely around the needs of others. You've carried an image with you your whole life. The candle that lights others regardless of how much it burns itself down. The fountain that quenches everyone's thirst without caring if there's anything left for itself. But you've forgotten something essential. A candle that burns out no longer illuminates. A dry fountain no longer quenches thirst. If you keep emptying yourself into others, one day there will be nothing left of you. And when that day comes, it won't be them who refill you, because they never learned how, because you never taught them that you needed it too. You spent too much time justifying why you keep giving, too much time telling yourself it's out of love, loyalty, commitment. But deep down, there's another truth you don't want to admit. You keep giving because you're afraid of what will happen if you stop. Afraid that if you stop being the one who's always there, people will leave you. Afraid that if you stop being useful, you'll stop being loved. But love that depends on your sacrifice is not love. Respect that relies on your exhaustion is not respect. Connection that only exists as long as you give without measure is not real connection. And until you understand this, you will remain trapped in this cycle, believing it's your duty to give until you're drained, thinking it's wrong to choose yourself, letting the world take from you without question. You cannot keep waiting for someone else to save you from this. You cannot keep waiting for people to realize they're exhausting you. You cannot keep waiting for life to magically reward you for everything you've given. You have to make that decision yourself. You have to be the one who says enough. You have to be the one who recognizes that your energy, your time, your love are sacred resources that should not be wasted on those who don't know how to value them. It's not selfishness. It's not cruelty. It's not abandonment. It's survival. It's self-respect. It's acknowledging that your existence has worth beyond what you can do for others. And if anyone ever made you believe otherwise, if anyone ever told you that being good meant enduring, sacrificing, and suffering in silence, it's time to question everything. It's time to reclaim what you've been giving away without measure. It's time to remember that you weren't born to be consumed, but to live fully, without the burden of those who only know how to take. You don't need anyone's permission to stop depleting yourself. You don't need justification to choose yourself. You don't need to wait for the world to understand your exhaustion. It's enough for you to understand it. It's enough for you to decide not to be anyone's sacrifice anymore. Because your goodness isn't measured by how much you can endure, but by how well you can protect yourself while remaining true to who you are. And the real question is, how much more do you need to lose before you understand this? You've tried to change others, believing that if you show them enough love, enough patience, enough understanding, they will eventually see what you see, understand what you understand. You waited, hoping that with time, these people would awaken, become aware, realize the harm they've caused or potential they've wasted. But it hasn't happened. And there you remain, trapped in the same invisible struggle, wondering why, despite all you've given, they remain unchanged. There's something difficult to accept something that contradicts everything you believed about human nature. Not everyone wants to change. Not everyone seeks growth. Not everyone desires to see the truth. And more importantly, not everyone wants to be saved. You've exhausted your energy trying to ignite a flame in those who only know darkness. Try to awaken those who have chosen to remain asleep. But there's a reality you must face. Change cannot be imposed. Growth cannot be demanded. Transformation cannot be forced upon those who do not seek it. The problem is that you've clung to the belief that you can make a difference in the lives of others, that if you love them enough, support them unconditionally, show them another path, they will eventually take it. And when they don't, when they keep repeating the same mistakes, when they continue choosing mediocrity, toxicity, or self-destruction, you take it as a personal failure, as if their lack of change is proof that you didn't do enough, as if the blame lies with you. But it doesn't. It's not within your power to change anyone. You cannot force someone to see what they're not ready to see. You cannot make someone value what they haven't learned to appreciate. And you cannot compel someone to treat you with love if they haven't learned to love themselves. And if you keep trying to change those who refuse to change, you will only destroy yourself in the process. Look at what it's cost you. Look at the years you spent in relationships that have only drained you. Look at the failed attempts to make someone understand what seems so clear to you. Look at the sleepless nights, the wasted energy, the pain of seeing that no matter how much you try, the other person remains the same. How much more are you willing to endure before you realize that some people simply do not want to be saved? There is something liberating in understanding this, something powerful in accepting that you are only responsible for your own path, that you cannot keep carrying the weight of other people's decisions, that you cannot keep sacrificing your peace for those who have chosen to live in chaos. Because at some point, the question is no longer why they won't change. The question is why you keep trying to change them. What keeps you tied to them? What fear stops you from letting go? Attachment is subtle. It disguises itself as love, loyalty, commitment. It convinces you that it's your duty to stay, that walking away is an act of betrayal. But it's not. The greatest betrayal is the one you commit against yourself when you cling to something that is destroying you, when you keep justifying the presence of people who have only shown they are incapable of giving you what you need. You cannot keep justifying it. You cannot keep ignoring the signs, telling yourself that with just a little more effort, just a little more love, everything will be different. Sometimes the greatest act of love is leaving. Sometimes the greatest act of respect is recognizing that you've already given enough. And sometimes the greatest proof of strength is not holding together what's falling apart, but letting it fall. Look at who you've given your energy to. Ask yourself if those people have risen to meet what you offer. Ask yourself if they have given you the same in return, not in words, but in actions. Ask yourself if your presence in their lives has been a blessing for them, but a burden for you. And if the answer is yes, then you already know what you need to do. Letting go doesn't mean hating them. It doesn't mean wishing them harm. And it doesn't mean your love was a mistake. It means accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. It means understanding that not all paths can be walked together. It means choosing yourself, not because you don't love them, but because you deserve to be loved too. It's hard. It's painful. It's a silent goodbye to a version of you that believed love could fix everything. But love isn't enough if there is no willingness. You cannot be the only one sustaining a relationship, a friendship, a bond. You cannot be the only one seeing the problem, wanting to improve, trying to heal, if the other person is unwilling to walk that path with you. The answer isn't dragging them. It's moving forward on your own. You spent too much time waiting for the other person to change, too much time justifying their lack of commitment, their lack of growth, their lack of reciprocity. But the waiting is over. You cannot keep postponing your peace for the sake of a possibility that never materializes. You cannot keep pouring your love into those who don't know how to receive it. It's time to close the door, to stop insisting, to stop arguing, to stop waiting. Because if someone hasn't changed by now, it's because they don't want to, and if they don't want to, nothing you do will ever change that. The only person you can save is yourself, and it is your responsibility to do so. There's no turning back, no more excuses, no more waiting. The only question that remains is, how much longer will you keep fighting for someone who isn't even willing to fight for themselves? You felt the weight of silence. You've stood in rooms full of voices and still felt alone. You've given your best. You've been the one who listens, who understands, who stays when everyone else leaves. But when the night falls and everything goes quiet, you realize there's an emptiness no one seems to notice, a space within you that's grown larger with every broken promise, every unexpected absence, every word you waited to hear but never did. Loneliness isn't always physical isolation. Sometimes it's being surrounded by people and realizing none of them truly know you. It's sharing your energy with those who only take, with those who never ask how you are, with those who assume you'll always be available because you never learned how to say no. It's realizing you built bridges toward others without noticing that no one has built one toward you. You've tried to fill those voids with company, with noise, with distractions. You've tried to convince yourself you don't need more, that what you have is enough, that if you keep giving, if you keep showing up, eventually someone will do the same for you. But deep down, you know the truth. You felt it in the sleepless nights, in the moments you hoped someone would choose you and they didn't, in the awkward silences of conversations that never go deep enough.